defeat.
Today's introductory guide will explore how to min-max your empty room for income generation and work towards that max cash stack. So let's get into it. There are many ways to utilize a room. If you're looking for convenience and not income, you can configure your room as a guest room to increase the max player limit for local co-op play. Or you could do a trophy room, study room, and a lot more. Anyway, back to today's topic. First off, what is min-maxing? Short for minimizing weaknesses and maximizing strengths, it refers to a player that optimizes their strategy by taking advantage of in-game mechanics to create the greatest possible version of the desired outcome. This often means that the other stats will be intentionally or unintentionally neglected as to not detract from the main objective. Generating income from an empty room is a common strategy many players utilize to subsidize their primary wealth generating skills. And over the years, players have come up with many strategies to achieve this. I'll start off with some off-meta builds. These are mainly used in other biomes such as the city biome. Short-term rentals such as Airbnb, co-working spaces, and workshop spaces all fit into this category. The issue with these strats as a player based in the suburban zones is that you cannot generate much income as it would be difficult to get high occupancy rates. Renting out the space for storage is also not effective as they are not comparable in terms of yield to renting the room as a living space. To improve the yield for this, you need to have a purpose-built storage building. Now that we've covered the off-meta builds, let's look at two viable strategies. The first strat is also the most common strategy, and that's the landlord build. The landlord build is great as it can provide stable, recurring income. There's really only one way to optimize for this. You need to maximize the number of players renting the space. You can choose to subdivide the room vertically, horizontally, or cram as many occupants in there as possible. Let's look at an example. The average rental cost of US student accommodation is about $200 a week. Two players sharing the same space would mean that the cost per occupant would be lower, but overall return would be greater. About 125 per person, resulting in a total of 250. 3 occupants, total of 285, and 4 players, about 300. Now, although each additional occupant does increase the yield of the room, there will be diminishing returns as they will be sharing the same space and amenities. As such, there is a theoretical limit to the amount of income you can generate from this method. Also, depending on the server that you're playing on, there may be occupancy limits based on minimum living space per occupant. Other regions may not have any room restrictions. It's important to note that although this strategy can prove very lucrative, if abused, it will have major ramifications to the player's reputation. The Slumlord questline can be initiated, and this can alter your character alignment chart and make it more difficult to make more money later on in the game. The second viable strategy is collectible investments, or what I like to call co-vestibles. Now, for this strategy to be worth it, the yield from the stored items should aim to generate at least the equivalent return from SPY index investing plus the potential rental income that would have been generated from the same space. There's a few possibilities to consider here. Commodities such as gold or collectibles such as trading cards or Lego. Today we will be looking at what I believe to be the best option for the co-vestable build, and that's Pokemon. I won't go into too much detail here on how exactly to invest in Pokemon as I plan on making separate videos in the future, but here's a rough introduction. It seems that players who use this build are quite secretive with their data as I had a hard time tracking down any information on the community boards. This may be a reason as to why you probably have not noticed many players abusing this build. From the information I was able to track down, we can see that the compound interest from vintage Pokemon from 2017 to 23 was very high. For example, 38% for base set unlimited PSA 8 sets and 22% for EX Legends PSA 8 sets. I've chosen PSA 8 data here as PSA 10 data gives even higher results. Looking at modern sets, we can see that over the past 3 years, Champion's Path has had a compound interest of about 34%, and the worst performing set I could find, Crimson Invasion, still had an annual compound interest rate of 13%. So for this video, I'll be assuming a 13% compound interest in the following examples. Let's say a casual collector has an assortment of Pokemon products totaling 15,000, which would be plenty to fill up a few shelves for a nice Pokemon display. At 13% interest, that would be $2,000 gain after the first year and a little more year on year after that. Although this is an impressive yield, assuming you rent out the room at $250 per week, that would be $13,000 each year, which is way higher than $2,000. To min-max, we need to really fill the room with Pokemon product. Probably the most well-known player who utilizes the build is a player that goes by Rudy on the US server. In this build, we will fill the entire room with storage shelves. In a typical 3x3 meter room, we can place racks like this. So the room can fit 11 racks. Each rack can hold 50 booster boxes, and at retail, a booster box is $1,000. So that would be a total of 550 booster box cases totaling $550,000. Now let's look at some more calculations. 13% gain on $550k in the first year would be $72,000 return compared to $67,000 for the equivalent investment in SPY index and renting. That's a difference of about 5k, and year on year after that, that difference would increase. By the third year, you would have a cumulative total of 25k more than from renting and investing in the SPY 500 index. The benefits from this build is obvious. The potential for wealth generation from this method is very high. You do not need to share your room with other players, and you can also flex your massive Pokemon collection. Obviously, there's a few caveats to this as well. Firstly, the high cost to fully initiate it. For players with limited capital, I suggest starting with renting the room in the early game and accumulating capital until you have enough cash stack to do the conversible build in the mid to late game. Other methods to jumpstart the build including taking a low interest loan from refinancing a home loan. You may not need the full 500k to start this build if you have a smaller room. With the scenario we presented before, 400k is about the break-even point, and this can be even lower depending on the room and location. Secondly, the room must be well insulated from extremes in temperature, which can affect the condition of the products inside. It's also a good idea to have a good home security system. If your base is in a high crime rate region, then this strategy may be especially risky. So there you have it, gamers. Min-maxing your spare room can be a fantastic way to generate income and maximize your wealth in game. Whether you choose to rent out the room or use it for storage and investing, the key is to carefully optimize your strategy and take advantage of in-game mechanics to max out the potential of the room. Thanks for watching, and be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications for more exciting videos on gaming, investing, and more.